Yeah, Andrew Mason would say, oh golly, we've missed that music. Sweet, sweet music. The UEFA Champions League has returned in all its glory with the 16 teams remaining. It is only right that 14-time champions Real Madrid get us on the way as they travel to Germany, and they got a win against RB Leipzig.
It's an early chance for Leipzig to make that happen. Comes out to Schlager and headed in. Flag is up, it looked offside. Šeško. The space was actually in the wide areas, and Real Madrid using their width with Rodrigo. Fellow countryman in the stands, and it's off the line. It's a mistake by Šeško. Kroos trying to announce himself back in Germany with a long ranger. And here's Vinicius. This could be a vital moment, but in the end, Rodrigo. It's played by Javi Simons. It's a lovely turn by Dani Olmo, and then, of course, in the middle, Raum arriving. And those who were in the middle had come backwards. Henrichs, the lovely ball for Dani Olmo, and Šeško following in. Lunin couldn't. Well, it would have been hard to hold the shot. It's a lovely turn from Brahim Diaz, and he's still going. Oh, boy, is he still going.
Superb bit of play. There's balance in there, awareness, and the skill at the end. Strength, too, to hold up his men.
Yeah, Brahim Diaz in the 48th minute getting the winner for Real Madrid, 1-0 at RB Leipzig. We're joined by our in-house football analyst and the prediction guru, Leger Williams. Thankfully, we didn't ask him to predict. Oh, yes, they did on the Champions League show, and he got them wrong. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about a Champions League victory for Real Madrid away from home, and just the way I think they would want to start with victory going into the second leg on their home turf.
Yeah, I assume that Madrid would have scored more goals in the game. I do think that RB Leipzig started the game extremely well. They had a goal ruled out for offside, rightfully so. It ended up being, in my opinion. And then Benjamin Sesko, I described him as one of the better young strikers in the European game at the very least. And he had several chances to get on his score sheet. He couldn't do that, unfortunately. And I think if you're going to allow the game to be level going into the second half against this Real Madrid team, and we all know that Real Madrid just know how to win. They know how to find a way to win. And then they have quality players in all facets of play. And Brahim Diaz, who came in for Jude Bellingham today, he's the one who ended up getting the goal, and what a goal it was as well. Yeah,
I'd like to think that this RB Leipzig team matched Real Madrid in many departments of the game today. Were you at all surprised by how close an encounter it was?
A bit. I actually predicted on the show that it would be like a 3-2 game, a 3-1 game in favor of Madrid. I do think that how Madrid play, they're set up to take advantage of whatever the opposing team gives them. So if they need to dominate the ball, they can do that. If they need to play on transition, they can do that. And that's what they did today, play on transition. RB Leipzig did pretty well, I think, in creating chances, in sustaining pressure. But when it came down to it, they couldn't limit the amount of transitional opportunities that Real Madrid could get. Real Madrid, they got a couple of chances. Vini got one. We saw Rodrigo getting one as well. And then Brahim Diaz, I think he really just made something out of nothing, staying on his feet, excellent agility and composure, and the finish was top-notch as well. So I think on the balance of play, probably a draw would have been a fairer result, but Real Madrid, they just can't give them a fighter's chance because they definitely will knock you out.
Yeah, and to accentuate the point that Ricardo just made about them matching Real Madrid in many areas, they got twice the number of corners Real Madrid got. They had more ball possession, and the number of shots on goal by both teams was even.
Yeah, RB Leipzig actually had more big chances created in the game as well. So, as I said, I think on another day, if the finishing was crisper, especially from Sesko, who got the chances, and maybe some of those passes that came across the 6-yard box and no one was there to meet them as well. So I think on another day, Real Madrid could have paid for a lot of their defensive mishaps. But On this day, unfortunately for RB Leipzig at least, that wasn't the case, and Real Madrid definitely seemed extremely solid in some aspects at least, especially in the second half. So someone like, I think, Camavinga, Cruz and Valverde, they were extremely involved in play and they had a good game. But RB Leipzig definitely surprised me a bit in terms of how they were able to sustain pressure. As a German team, Sir Lance, as you would know, they're masters of efficiency, and so often in the German game, especially in the 21st century, so many transitional games there. And when we see RB Leipzig, when they played against Manchester City, for example, they thrived on the transition in both of the games in the group stages. That was the type of game I was expecting today, but Madrid conceded the ball to them a lot, and RB Leipzig were able to handle that as well. So I think it was an impressive game plan by their coach, Marco Rose, and they did well, but, you know, as I said, obviously not well enough.
Yeah, I was watching the Champions League coverage with Donald hosting yourself and Eric Rademacher's heading into the games. Of course, we'll talk about Man City in a little bit, but the general feeling, and I heard Donald say it a few times, and it is accepted that many people consider City to be the #1 team in Europe. Brent Sancho, who is one of our analysts, doesn't agree with that. He thinks Real Madrid is still the top team. We're still some ways away from the tournament decider, but how solid do you think Real Madrid are? Not reading too much into what happened today, because we know how Real Madrid plays. They do what is necessary to go all the way. Your assessment of their title bid, given what you saw today?
Well, I think at current they're a top 2 team in Europe. I think it's them and City. I think that Madrid, despite their defensive injuries especially, they've still remained extremely solid at the back. They have the least conceded goals in La Liga as well by quite a distance. So I think that they've added that defensive solidity. I think very few midfields in the world can match theirs as well. But I do think that with all that defensive solidity, if there was a team able to be brave enough to sustain pressure against them with the added quality that other teams would have, when I mentioned the teams that they could match up against in the Champions League, maybe a Manchester City, maybe a Bayern, maybe a Arsenal as well, I do think that they could cause them problems, in addition to the fact that all of those teams have relatively strong defenses at times as well, with the exception of Bayern as well. We know how they have been performing lately. So I do think that Real Madrid are a fantastic team. I would have to disagree with Brent Sancho that they're the best team in Europe, because there's still a certain way you can attack Madrid, and I think if you sustain pressure enough and you're able to manage transitions well, and that's exactly what City, Arsenal can do very well. So I would put them at the #2 spot right now for the title, because City just came off of a trouble and they're still playing just as well as they did before. All of their players are extremely fresh coming into the business end of the season as well. So if City can stay fit, I don't see another team beating City in the Champions League.
Yeah, I was really waiting on the Arsenal reference. By the way, RB Leipzig have now failed to keep a clean sheet in their last 14 Champions League matches. Real Madrid, they are 7 in a row as far as victories are concerned in the Champions League. That's their best win streak since the 2014-2015 season, April 2014 to February 2015. So they are on quite a roll at this stage. Let's move along then to Manchester City. They were in action today as well. They were away from home. They took on FC Copenhagen, and yes, they got the victory, and yes, they scored a lot of goals, 3 in fact. Copenhagen got 1 though. Let's see the highlights.
The former England goalkeeper Paul Robinson is with me tonight. What would your advice be to Copenhagen?
It's a tough ask for them tonight, obviously, but they've got a good record at home.
There's space for John Stones, who likes to break from the back line into midfield. He got into a little bit of a tussle there.
He's going to want to get in amongst them, make it a comfortable night for Manchester City, because at the moment they're having all their own way.
They're taking this one quickly. And it's sent in by Bernardo Silva, and it's helped away by the goalkeeper Grabera. And Ake can't believe he didn't stick it home. Come up with some terrific results, none more so than that final day victory over Galatasaray, which earned them this spot. But here's De Bruyne, capitalising on the fast start that Manchester City have made.
Well, how many warnings do Copenhagen need? It's fantastic play again by Manchester City, but nobody gets near them. It's
Doku trying to feed the ball into Bernardo Silva. Haaland's waiting in the centre. It's half pushed away by Grabara. Kept alive by Foden, who's going for it again. This time it is in the hands of the Polish goalkeeper. Haaland looking for Rodri, who'll set it back for Doku. He took a deflection and it came back towards Bernardo Silva. Still not clear. Well, that's a poor kick out. And it's collected by El Yunusi and then fired in brilliantly by Maatsen on his debut. What a strike that was!
Nothing will give them more confidence than a goal. Manchester City relaxed. Ederson playing it out from the back. It's an awful pass from him. He does it all season. He's very, very good at it. It's just his execution. You can see what he's trying to do. The execution of the pass is wrong. Out of the box, closed down, and then Maatsen still got a lot of work to do because the goalkeeper recovers. The goalkeeper gets back to the centre of the goal, gets himself in a good position, yet still can't reach the finish.
Stones to De Bruyne. Stumbles, put into a couple of challenges. It might come through to Bernardo Silva. An instinctive finish. A wonderful finish from Bernardo Silva.
It's the quality again. De Bruyne almost bumbles his way through a couple of tackles. Don't know whether he actually means to get the second pass through. Comes off inadvertently off Maatsen, I think, into Silva's pass. And he's finished past the goalkeeper.
It's De Bruyne. Now Doku, Haaland, looking to return it to Doku, who shifts it on to Bernardo Silva. This looks ominous. Here's Haaland. It's onto the roof of the net.
It's a decent save by Grabara in the end, although I do think he gets lucky. It hits the underside of his leg.
Foden finding De Bruyne, trying to tee it up for Foden.
Foden at the heart of it. It's inadvertently a 1-2 with Kevin De Bruyne. De Bruyne does brilliantly well. He cuts it back via a deflection. Foden's got the easiest attack, puts it into an empty net.
Yeah, Manchester City winning by 3-1. Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden getting the goals for them. Magnus Maatsen getting Copenhagen's goal. It was to level at 1-1, but of course in true Manchester City style they pulled away to get the victory, and not many, if any, would bet against them booking their quarter-final place following the second leg of the UEFA Champions League. Leger Williams, another City performance.
Yeah, it was excellent. It was completely overwhelming, actually, especially in the first 30 minutes or so. I think if things went another way for them, they could have scored 3-4 goals in those opening 30 minutes. They were brilliant, I think, and in all of the goals, you could see that even though Copenhagen hadn't played a game in a while, so they, in theory, should be the team that could plan a bit better for the game. But Manchester City, I think, showed their utter dominance with all of the goals because Pep Guardiola had a clear game plan in how to break down Copenhagen's low block, and that was to attack the half spaces. And if we look at all of Manchester City's chances, here you're going to see the first goal. It all came from players attacking the half spaces. Here's Kevin De Bruyne attacking it, shooting on the first occasion. And then for the third goal, especially, instead of shooting, he just cut it back for Foden. So it was just masters at work, really, in terms of what City can do to break down teams who want to defend deep against them. And I think maybe apart from Liverpool over the past decade or so, no other team has been as efficient and as good at breaking down low blocks as them. And they're just showing why they're the best team in Europe and why they continue to be heralded as favourites in the Champions League.
It's an interesting point you make about the low block, right? Because I have a theory that a lot of these teams don't necessarily want to play in that low block, but this Manchester City team is so good that they force you to. There is so much quality out there that when you get out there, you have no choice but to put men behind the ball.
And that's a perfect assessment, Ricardo. There's something that Pep Guardiola said from his Barcelona days. He said that, you know, initially when you, as a coach, when you go there, you want to play a certain style of play. We see it, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring it up again. We see it with Arsenal, of course, initially we couldn't assert our dominance immediately to
we meaning Arsenal.
Yes, we meaning Arsenal.
Sorry, I thought you, sorry. I have to be clear.
Arsenal couldn't assert their dominance in certain aspects, so teams started to press us higher and higher, and then we couldn't really pin back teams. But there's something Pep said from his early Barcelona days. He said, when you get the chance, you have to beat teams into contempt. So what that means is that we have the technical proficiency to keep the ball in tight spaces, in and around your box, in your defensive third, and you're not going to do anything about it, and you eventually just have to sit back and hope that we don't score, and you're going to have to defend. And then that has become a trend now. So whenever he plays, basically 95% of games, City, that's what they come up against, as long as they're not playing against another top club that will come out and press them, and there'll be more space in the game. Most of the games City play, they have to come up against that low block. And then when you come up against that low block, a low block is one of the hardest things to break down because you don't have space. So what do teams do? They have exquisite movement that they couple with the technical proficiency. And when you couple those two things together to keep the ball well, and when you have the movement to break down and outnumber the teams in those defensive areas, there's honestly nothing you can do about it. So sometimes it's even more dangerous to try and defend against a City team as opposed to coming out and pressing them. But then again, if you don't have the players and the athletes to press them effectively, there's nothing you can do either way. So what I'm trying to say is this team is almost unbeatable, and there's basically nothing you can do but hope, and hope that you can have the players or you get some luck to really beat them, because the City team is a juggernaut. They're one of the few teams to ever win a treble, the second team in English football in quite some time to win a treble, and they're showing why they're that good and why they're the best team in Europe, as I've said several times.
Yeah, overcompensating for all the Arsenal references. We're going to charge you, Mr. Williams, for every time you make an Arsenal reference on this show. That's it for our Champions League segment on this Tuesday. There will be no SportsMax Zone on Wednesday, but that will not stop us from showing you UEFA Champions League football, which will include a pre-halftime and post-game show. It's going to be PSG taking on Real Sociedad. That's going to be at 3 p.m. 4 Eastern Caribbean time, and the pre-game show will begin at 2:30 p.m. in Jamaica. That's 3:30 ECT.